guys, welcome back to Just Checks Out in all my chaotic hair glory, and today we'll be talking about my January wrap up. So let's get started. January was actually a really good reading month for me. I'm gonna start with my stats. My stats are not like what I read and stuff like that. It's what was in my little, reading goals thing for the year. So I read 2 out of 6 of the classics by women. I did 1 out of 6 vlogs. I think it's 1 out of 6. 1 out of 6, 1 out of 8, something like that. And I did 3 out of 24 reviews. So, not bad. And I did 8 videos in total. Really not bad, all things considered. Alright, I will say that I'm still supporting the HarperCollins Strike. So, if you see this graphic up here, that's why I keep pointing up there. I accidentally read a book without realizing it, so I cannot talk about it. And I have some feelings about that, so I really hope at some point I can talk about these HarperCollins books, because there's a lot now. There's probably like 10 or 11 I want to talk about. I didn't realize I actually read that much HarperCollins, because I don't ever pay attention to the publishers for the most part. I just kind of go with what I like. And then I had 3 DNFs. I had The Good Sister, which is by Sally Hepworth, and that one is talking about, it's like a domestic thriller, between like sisters, I guess. I don't know. I got like 10% in. I felt like the character was, it's something about like a baby. I don't remember the full description because I was so not invested in it. But basically, like, it's these 2 sisters. This boy was like killed at some point. That's in the prologue. It's not that much of a spoiler. And then like there's something to do with that. And then one of the sisters, Fern, yeah, I think it's Fern. Fern reads as autistic, but I didn't get far enough. I don't know if she's actually diagnosed with, with any kind of being on the spectrum, but either way, I got really tired of being in Fern's head, not because Fern was bad, but because of the way Hepworth was treating Fern. She was not that great. Any noises in the background, as always, my daughter. Read Rules for Visiting, and that one was supposed to be like a take on the Odysseus experience a bit, and I got 10% in, or maybe up to 20%, and we still hadn't left the like her house or her area, and I was just done by that point. I need something like, I'm a character person by nature. I love characters, but I need the characters to be not just good, but also compelling, and neither one of these books had compelling characters in the least. And that's also the same pity with the third book, There's No Such Thing as an Easy Job, because that was a translated book that I actually wanted to put for my goals for this year. And I had it out from the library, and I got so bored. I was like 15%, not even 15%. I think it was like less than 10, somewhere around there. Usually I don't count it, but because it was supposed to be part of my goals, I'm going to put it in clear. And I was bored senseless. There was nothing there for me. So I couldn't. And I just got rid of it. But then after that, after the rest of the month, for the most part, was a really good reading. 1 2-star, and that was Agnes Grey, which I will not go over too much because I have a video about it, and I'll link it below. But Agnes Grey was not my cup of tea. I don't like Thomas Hardy. It had a very Thomas Hardy feel. I know this came out before Thomas Hardy, but it still had that same feel of bleakness, and I don't like bleakness. Mixed in with weirdly Jane Austen, and I'm also not a Jane Austen fan, so that was not the book for me. And it's about this young girl who comes from genteel poverty. She's like, okay, I need to make money. Let me go be a governess. Turns out she's not very good at her job, and the kids that she was around, they got issues. All right. And then the next one is the last book I read of the month, and that is We Are All So Good at Smiling. And I like it here. It's written in verse. It's a YA. And it is about dealing with trauma and how we respond to it. I found that really interesting, and it was written in like the world of fairy tales, which if you know anything at all, you know about me. I love fairy tale adaptations. I love fairy tales. I think they're very fascinating to kind of deconstruct them and put them back together and see what was saying about society at the time, so forth. But I feel like this one was overreaching in the idea between that and mental health, and I don't think there was a good balance in between them. And that was a pity because I really did enjoy the fairy tale elements were great, and but the mixed in with the contemporary mental health world kind of. Okay, now the rest are all 4 and 5 star reads. I had no like 1 star or 3 stars. There was no in betweens for that. Like there was only like 1 2 star and 1 3.5 star. I mean, that's a pretty freaking good start of the month or start of the year. I had She Said, which is a nonfiction book about the Harvey Weinstein as well as the how do you put this? The outcome of other industries as well, and how you know getting Harvey Weinstein kind of was like the band-aid of it all because there was a lot more that came out and nothing really came to fruition because the idea is to protect the powerful, and so Harvey Weinstein is not the same as everyone else. What was I reading? I was reading a book in this month for February, and there was a character that reminded me so much of Harvey Weinstein, and I was like, yeah, he's been endemic for a while because this book was written like 20 years ago. So I found it really compelling, really well developed. I only gave it 4 stars because I felt like sometimes it was too disengaged and too clinical. And I understood that because there were 2 authors and there were 2, investigative journalists who have their different styles and stuff. But I felt like it was missing the humanity part at times. And I felt like they were distancing themselves too much from the story when in the end they were part of the story as well, the journalists. I know people have talked about Ronan Farrow's, but to me, this one was very interesting because it came from the perspective of 2 women. And then you have Dead Ringer, which I read Dead Ringer after reading 2 pretty heavy or 3 heavy books at a time, and I wanted something light. I love a good cozy mystery. And this one was like, I think 2.5 hours, somewhere around there, audiobook. And it's about this young, not young, but like I say this young because compared to some of like Harvey Weinstein people, but this woman has her business. She has a bridal business, and she's going to the bridal expo to kind of get exposure or whatever because a lot of cities have those, so that's completely valid and normal to me. But so she was going to her cities, and she found that someone was there was like a jewelry heist in the middle of it. It had a very like Muppet feel, Muppet Caper, but like I had that feeling, and I really enjoyed that. And it was very like cozy mystery. It was very fun. It was very interesting, very engaging, and I enjoyed the side characters. I enjoyed the main character. This was like a novella between 2 bigger books in the series. I never read the series, but I was easily able to follow along, which I always consider that a high win for a cozy mystery series. Loved it. And then I read Selkies Are a Girl's Best Friend. You guys know I love a Molly Harper book. And my subscription runs out in February for Audible Plus, and the Mystic Bayous are Audible originals. So I kind of have to read them this way. So I'm trying to get through some stuff so I can get the last ones of these done, and that's why I read Selkies. And it's not my favorite Mystic Bayou. It's about this, very efficient, very, I want to say human. I think she's human. Uh, Lead character who ends up falling for a Selkie in the bayou. But what I appreciated was there was a sense of community because Molly Harper is amazing at that. But Mystic Bayou felt real, and I really appreciated and loved that so much. I also like I said before in the Dead Ringer, I love the side characters. I think that, Zed and Baal and Julian and, all the normal side characters, the family community aspect of it really worked for someone coming into a community who has created some roots, and then someone, you know, figuring out their place, someone else figuring out their place in the community. It was a really nice, really smart collection of things, and I also I like the consistency in the world, and the world gets stronger, the mystery gets stronger. Talking about the rift, which is what's creating some of these paranormal and supernatural creatures now, and there's a lot of really interestingness to it, so I'm always for it. And then I read Anne of Green Gables, which again was the second that I talked about in my classics by women. I really enjoyed this. This was a reread because the last time I read this was, God, 30 years ago, somewhere around there. Because I was always reading when I was a kid. I read everything from like, Anne of Green Gables and Little House on the Prairie to Sweet Valley High to Danielle Steele, John Grisham. I was a very, eclectic reader as a child. And so being able to go back to, Anne of Green Gables was fun. And I was listening to it on audiobook, and on Audible, it's Rachel McAdams. This is actually for a buddy readathon. I will link to it. It's on Instagram. It's by Hodpatch Reader Reads, and it's very fun. It's very interesting. I don't want to talk about it too much until then, because it's not until the middle of February that it's over, because it's the Valentine's Day read for the book club. And so, but I love how vivacious that Anne was. I love how energetic, and I was like, oh my God, that's going to be my kid. And the reason I say that is that was me as a child. I was very like mile a minute talking. Like I used to talk faster than I talk now. I've actually slowed myself down. And I was constantly looking at facts and constantly memorizing things and constantly just blurting out whatever I felt was true. So I found this amazing. I love the reread. The only reason I didn't give it 4 stars is I felt like I only gave it 4 stars is I felt like there were some elements that were conveniently wrapped up, which again, era of the book, I think it was like the early 1900s, so that completely made sense to me. But I feel like it was missing a few items that I probably would have loved to have read more. And then I read after, like, one of the last books I read of the month was The Salt Fields, which, woo. So this one was talking about the character of Minister Jones, and I remember his name specifically because his name does not match what he is. But it talks about the Great Migration of African Americans from the South up north, and this is in the late 40s, early 50s, and he's going from South Carolina up north, and it's his train ride and the things he gets into along the way and what he learns and the mistakes he makes and stuff like that. And I found it very compelling. If you like Alice Walker or Zora Neale Hurston, you're gonna like him, or you're gonna like this character. I could definitely see the influences of both within this work, but it wasn't a carbon copy. There was a little bit of maybe some. It wasn't ring shout because it wasn't. There wasn't the supernatural element to it, but it was. You could definitely see it set in that kind of a world as well, sans paranormal, and so there was a very rawness to the short story, and I was actually impressed. I picked it because I needed something short, and I was like, "Oh, this is one I haven't heard of," so read that one. And then that's the last of the 4 stars. There's only 3 5 stars, and then I can leave, and so can you. Okay, so 2 of them I'm not going to talk about too greatly because I actually have videos for them. One is Good Neighbors, which was by Stephanie Burgess. I have a blog that you can listen to, and that's my Arc Angle blog because it was an arc of the audiobook, but also some strange I had to record at odd angles because it was a very chaotic time for me at the time. So it is what it is. Um, I loved that one. It was a great like mix of paranormal and the supernatural meets almost like it wasn't a steampunk world, but you could definitely see it in that kind of a setting of the world because Stephanie Burgess has got an amazing imagination and viewpoint of her characters. She very much knows who they are. And apparently there is I think it's a short novella that came out recently about two of the older characters that were mentioned in that series because it's a collection of short stories. And so some of the characters that show up throughout the short stories are in there. Which I can't wait to read that. And then Patience and Not Forsaken, again, I also put up because it was still, I keep on saying July 13th. I had a friend who had that birthday, so my brain is just instantly stuck into July 13th. But Friday the 13th, it was Friday the 13th, and I posted that. That one was amazing. I really enjoy Alex Harrow's short books. I want to see if I can find her longer books and read them throughout this year because I've really enjoyed everything I've read by her. Harrow, I keep wanting to say her though. That's default, and that's a bit of a problem because I'm not entirely sure about gender. I just see the name Alex and I think of a girl because I have a cousin, Alexandria. So for my brain, just kind of like translate everything into things that I know. But Harrow does this great job of really describing this like 1950s, 1960s, I think, style world and the ramifications of having to hide who you are. Stuff like that really matters to me. And there was a lot of depth and a lot of, you know, trindles throughout the story that kind of like fold in, and I found that to be highly interesting. I will link that one as well below. And then finally, I did get to I'm Glad My Mom Died. And this is why I needed to read Dead Ringer, because I read this and she said back to back. This is also why I started to read Spare, and Spare is on pause right now. Because, woof, there was a lot of that. So, I'm Glad My Mom Dead is this great book, but it's a very heavy read. Like she said, there's a lot of content in there that has some questionable usefulness to the reader. I don't mean questionable as in like it's useless. I mean, I don't know, like trigger warnings for disordered eating, parental abuse, um, power dynamics, uh, the Nickelodeon creator everyone doesn't talk about, um, you know, substance abuse. There's a lot in there, and Jeanette is not that old to have experienced all this stuff, but being pushed into being a child star in order to secure your family's future is something we've seen time and time again, and it never turns out well. And I really wish parents would stop. Like, you're an adult, go make your own money. You created a family, you have to figure out how to support them. It is not up to your child to support. Like, personally, I couldn't put my child in, any kind of acting roles or anything like that because I I have such disdain for how people connect with these guys. Um, I can't do it. But I felt so bad for Jeanette. Like not just my mom heart, but my daughter heart felt so hurt for her. She deserves so much better than what she was given, and that just makes me sad. I know everyone's been talking about it, and I actually had it from the library in 2022, but I couldn't get to it because I was running out of time, and I knew I was going to need time to digest what I read. I will say, don't read it in 2 days like I did because your library returning time is up, though. Like, if you're going to read it, please take your time and read lighter stuff in between. That's my best advice because it's so heavy. The parental abuse is very high, and I want to make sure that you're aware of that. Ironically, I'm talking about parental abuse, and my husband is making my daughter laugh. Kind of like a really good synchronicity, I think. And a good note to end on. Okay, guys, I had an amazing month for the most part. I was super impressed with what I could find. I I liked the variety of books I read. February will not be quite so because I have the secret project coming up in February, which should come out near middle end of the month, depending on how long it takes me to edit things out and to record, because these days are not very common right now in Germany, as you can hear from my daughter. I really, I really hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful reading month. Please in the comments below write, your top reads for the month, what you liked, didn't like, what you would love to read more of. If you have any suggestions, please put them in there. We'll talk to you guys later, and bye.